You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
We are committed to the pharmacy owner's success. PrimeRx believes in empowering pharmacies with innovative solutions to thrive in today's competitive landscape. We look forward to working with pharmacy owners and sharing how our solutions can contribute to their sustained profitability and growth. Connect with us on the web by going to PrimeRx.io. That's PrimeRx.io.
Hey, welcome back to PrimeRx. This is a podcast series that we have been excited to partner with the PrimeRx team. I look to that organization, a shout out to Larry Stevenson, just everything that this organization has done for the industry, for our independent community pharmacies. We see them at conferences. We see the investments that they've made. Their website, if you don't have an update, PrimeRx.io. Once again, that's PrimeRx.io. Today, what an exciting time in the profession of pharmacy. Payment is changing. Pharmacies' roles are changing. We have collaborative agreements that are increasing. The consultant role of our pharmacist will continue to grow. When you talk about that, we have to talk about technology that supports our clinical pharmacists, our clinician pharmacists, the independent community pharmacies. And part of that is making sure that we're compliant and that we are mitigating the risk of our independent community pharmacies. Once again, that's an investment that PrimeRx makes into the core of their partnerships and of their systems. We're going to be talking about Pharmacy Forward, the DSCSA Readiness with PrimeRx and InfiniTrak, and really understanding where are we with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, the DSCSA, and what that means for our industry. And we bring experts to these panels. I am certainly not the expert. That's why we have these podcasts to gather the people that know what they're talking about. I would like to introduce the Vice President of Data Analytics and Partnerships with PrimeRx, Sam Pizzo. It is so good to see you.
Hey, Todd, good to see you too. And thank you for putting this together. Excited to be here. It's been a very busy year. I'm actually going into my 6th month here at PrimeRx, and I'm just excited to be part of the team as we move forward. I've actually been working with Mark Tate and InfiniTrak for a couple of years now, helping them put together their processes and procedures as well, and then came over here at PrimeRx to help in other aspects of the industry. Just coming off of NCPA in Columbus this past week. Yeah. Really good to see pharmacies out there learning, looking at new technology, looking at what needs to be done, what they need to be doing, talking to other people, just kind of still on a little high from being there. So now getting back home and just trying to get back into moving forward and getting some things done.
I agree. The month has gone by so quickly. 3 conferences this month for the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and I haven't decompressed yet to the energy and the hope that was part of the NCPA and the clarity, lots of information, lots of discussions, and the compliance part and the stop, the start, the shift around DSCSA was one of my many conversations that were there. And I didn't have you with me, Sam, so would have liked to actually have our guest today, the star of our show today, is Mark Tate. He's president of InfiniTrak. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot. It's great to be on the podcast here. It's not our first time. We've been doing compliance with Drug Supply Chain Security Act way back since 2016, and we've participated in your podcasts, and they're always incredibly valuable and beneficial, and it's really an honor to be here. It's great to be on with Sam. As Sam referenced, he's worked with us at InfiniTrak in the past and helped us understand pharmacies and make a great products for dispensers to make sure that we're able to work well and help solve issues. And so it's a real honor to be on with Sam, who's a good friend. I was also just at NCPA, and we were very excited to see the real intense focus on Drug Supply Chain Security Act and the need to get compliance. As you said, it's been a kind of a roller coaster ride with Drug Supply Chain Security Act when it launched in 2016, and it delayed and started, and people focused on it, people didn't focus on it. Now we're at the real deadline, and people are really focused. We had enormous amount of conversations and picking up a lot of new customers there at NCPA, and we were excited to be there. But I'm very excited to be on this podcast to talk about where we are, talk about some of these exemptions, talk about what needs to be done for a dispenser as we approach the November 27th deadline.
November 27th deadline, that really stands out to me, Mark. Just
Yes.
as someone who talks with pharmacy owners weekly in different sectors, long-term care, specialty, community pharmacy. We have to kind of make the definition first, just in case we have some listeners that are need refreshed or don't understand DSCSA. This is a law aimed at ensuring the integrity and safety of the pharmaceutical supply chain. Give us an overall definition, Mark, as to the DSCSA.
Sure, I'd love to do that. So it's really about patient safety. It really is. It's a law that allows us to work as a community within the supply chain to track drug transactions from the manufacturer all the way to the dispenser. The purpose being to prevent counterfeits and tampered with drugs or harmful drugs from getting to patients. It's been a long process. We work collaboratively with a lot of other vendors, third-party vendors, wholesalers, manufacturers, third-party logistics partners to be able to track all of this data, ensure the veracity of the product as it gets to the patient. It's been a little bit of a lift to be able to do it. Fundamentally, what you need to be able to do is track all of what we call T3, or now we call T2 data, the transaction data of all the drugs that are shipped from the manufacturer to the wholesaler to the dispenser. Save that data for at least 6 years. You need to be verifying your authorized trading partners to make sure they're fully licensed, so you're not doing business with bad actors within the supply chain. You need to be able to identify what we call suspect product or illegitimate product, identify it, document it, report it to the FDA and or the trading partners and boards of pharmacies, so we can get a hold of whether there's bad product out there, whether it's harmful product out there. And then now we're moving into the second phase where we're doing interoperable functions, receiving serialized data, so we can track down to the specific product. We can figure out where problems are happening in the supply chain. We can prevent counterfeits being out there. Often when you're talking to pharmacists, they believe they don't have any or very much suspect product. But the reality is there's a lot of counterfeit out there. The biggest, latest example is counterfeit Ozempic. Counterfeit happening about a month and a half ago, where a bad actor stole a serial number, reproduced the serial number of the product in the product identifier in the data, reproduced it tens of thousands of times. He got that product into the market. He tried to sell it to patients. It was basically, it was a counterfeit that they produced, and it was pharmacists that were able to uncover that counterfeit, partially through the structure of the supply of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, ultimately protecting patients. Again, there was another counterfeit earlier on HIV drugs, which were tremendously dangerous, but they were able to slip that into the supply chain, and it was discovered when patients were not getting the benefit from the drug that they were supposed to be. And again, a pharmacist was able to uncover that and report that, get an investigation, find the source, and get it out of the market. So it's a very important regulation for patient safety. I'm a little bit of a geek on compliance, but I'm very excited to be involved in this, to be able to help protect patients, protect healthcare, to make sure that they're getting good drugs.
Yeah, we are protecting the patients. We're reducing the chances of counterfeit, tracking and finding the stolen components, the compounds, the medications, contaminated drugs entering the U.S. supply chain is a major issue. And you're in this system, the compliancy, it's going to make it safer and obviously more transparent. That's time to actually shift the gear, Sam, back to you. And that is, why don't you give us your insights on how DSCSA compliance will affect pharmacies in what has become the PrimeRx major push is to ensure this, and what you're doing to be as compliant as possible and making this less painful for our pharmacy owners.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, I have worked with InfiniTrak for the last couple of years with Mark, the team, and whatnot, knowing that the full implementation of DSCSA is going to affect the pharmacies where additional work is going to need to be done. So what we've done at PrimeRx, having a clear understanding of the workflow within pharmacies and what needs to be done, it's important for pharmacies to understand what they need to be doing. As an example, the scanning part. So the pieces that Mark just put together and outlined about saving data, having an SOW, quarantining or looking for suspect products, that's in place today. The mandate for those pieces are already in place. Pharmacies are supposed to be doing that. Come November now 27th, a little less than a month, they're going to be responsible for all the pieces. And Mark can get into there's a couple exceptions still left. So this law has been a little complicated, convoluted, like you mentioned at the beginning of the discussion here. But what we did at PrimeRx, and I think is really one of the best ways to help pharmacies. You got to remember, the key thing in order to be compliant, InfiniTrak is not in your pharmacy. They can't see what you're physically getting. What they do see is what you're ordering on paper, what's coming through or what's coming to you from your supplier. They see all that, but they can't validate it at the store, and that's where the pharmacies come in. There's different ways that pharmacies can account for the product that they receive. There's a number of different ways that they can do that. But what we've done with our system, our integration with InfiniTrak is we lessen that additional scanning piece. So ideally, we can, when a pharmacy receives a product, the best way to do it is to scan it into their system. That way it's all done electronically, and we can see everything. And then if InfiniTrak sees something that's missing, they can alert the pharmacy that, hey, you ordered this, but we didn't see that come in. What we've done is we've built that into the workflow as well. So when a pharmacy is actually going through their workflow process, they scan that bottle. That bottle is sent over to InfiniTrak to continue to validate that this product was from this order. With the new QR code that all products are to have. So the additional, the QR code that every product now has not only the lot and expiration, it also has the G10 and the serial number. Remember, every product out there, every bottle has its own unique serial number. And that is that's part of the DSCSA law and why how to make it easier to track a product from the time it's manufactured to the time it hits the pharmacy and everyone in between. So it's kind of a big picture overall view of what we're doing, but the integration that we at PrimeRx have created simplifies that process and minimizes the amount of extra work the pharmacy is going to need to do to be compliant.
That's right. And Sam brought up a good point that I didn't really focus on when I spoke before, but this law was rolled out in 2 phases. The first phase, what we call lot level tracking. In all pharmacies, all dispensers, all wholesalers, et cetera, need to be compliant with the lot level tracking today before this deadline on the 27th. That lot level tracking requires you to be receiving this data today at a lot level, which is used with an EDI transaction. The lot level tracking started in 2016, and everybody should be receiving that. They need to have a SOP describing how they're complying with the law, and they need to be checking their trading partners' licensing to make sure they're not working with bad actors. As we move into the second phase, we're going from lot level tracking to product level tracking. And that means we're gathering serial numbers for every single saleable unit in your pharmacy, which is an enormous amount of data and required a different kind of data protocol, which we call EPSIS. And the EPSIS data protocol is also an interoperable protocol, which allows you to communicate back into the supply chain to do things like product verification if you do get a product that may be suspect. And as that's kind of a confusing description to pharmacists as they're doing all the heavy lifting for all the other compliance issues within their pharmacy. Often the question we got is, you're telling me we're gonna have to do this check-in process twice. We're gonna have to scan products twice. We're gonna have to make sure we're receiving this workflow receiving multiple times within our pharmacy. We're already overwhelmed. And this integration with micro merchant understands that pharmacy's present burden and actually makes it so that there's not additional workflow from what they were doing before, because the way I understand it, let Sam correct me, but they're using actions that have already happened in their workflow and integrating our platform with theirs with the data to make sure that the proper checks and balances are happening with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act data, so that they don't actually have an added workflow to be compliant, but they get the full compliance package. And as Sam referenced, we put these real-time alerts to advise them directly if there's a conflict or a problem with a drug or a license. That way they live in their PrimeRx platform. We exist behind the scenes. We don't add to their workflow, but we achieve full compliance and protect the patient as a result.
Exactly, Mark. And to add to that, the double scanning is the key piece. So with PrimeRx, we've done something unique that I don't know if anyone else does it, and that is the way we're taking that serial number or that scan in within workflow eliminates the need for a pharmacy to have to double scan or scan a product twice when they receive it, once for their inventory, once for the InfiniTrak system. The integration helps to do that, and it creates what I consider a double check on that product. So for pharmacies that do scan product in, PrimeRx is going to see that anyway, and we can send that over to the InfiniTrak system. But also when we double check it during workflow, that goes back to revalidate to InfiniTrak that the product is in fact what was ordered is what was received from that standpoint.
Absolutely. It's a very impressive, smooth system that PrimeRx customers are able to use, and like I said, get full compliance and not add to their workflow, which is a very important point I hear from pharmacists on a regular basis.
Exactly. And so the fact that the alerts that you mentioned, Mark, that's unique because a pharmacist, in order to check, or the pharmacy, in order to check to make sure everything's correct, they'll have to go into their system or into the InfiniTrak portal to look for, did this order come in? Okay, did this come in? Fine, what have you. It basically, the system alerts the pharmacy that, hey, you ordered this, but actually we haven't seen it, or we didn't see this, or it's not correct. We alert the pharmacy. So it's a call to action, basically letting the pharmacy know, hey, something's not right with that order or with that product, and then they can start investigating at that point.
Absolutely. And the common refrain I would hear when we were first marketing the product was, oh no, not another portal I have to sign into from pharmacists. the many different portals that they have to use in order to do their daily business. So this integration really helps reduce that for the pharmacy. It's exciting. It's exciting for me. So
the simplicity and the assurance that I have a technology company, my pharmacy system, that is tied into this, it really puts me at ease. If I was an owner, I don't want to think about so many of these things when I have employees, I have, the audits, and I have things going on. And obviously my patients, my community is the most important thing. And now PrimeRx and InfiniTrak's bringing something to the table that just brings seamlessness to it. So this is good to hear.
Yeah,
there's a lot of I'm sorry, Mark. There's a lot of confusion out there, Todd, in what they need to be doing, what the pharmacy needs to do, and then when you hear about the delays, and Mark, you may want to touch on this. When you hear about the delays, they're like, oh, we don't have to do anything until another year or what have you. There's a new delay that affects a certain portion of the pharmacy, and you can explain that a little better. But remember, there are procedures that you need to be doing today. So there are aspects of the first phase is in place today. So Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, and so there's a term we call WEEs in the industry, which is an abbreviation for 3 categories of what we loosely call delays, which really aren't delays. There's waivers, exemptions, and exceptions. But recently there was an exemption letter sent out for pharmacies, which gave a delay for interoperability for pharmacies with 25 or less full-time pharmacists and pharm techs. This was a delay recognizing that the full data stream wasn't up and running. They weren't able to send all the serialized data yet. This happened about a couple months ago. And that delay gave pharmacies the ability to wait a little bit of extra time to have the serialized part of the law fully compliant. However, the first phase that we talked about before, receiving the data, authorizing your partners, finding suspect product, reporting suspect product, still in full force. So it's a little bit confusing when we use the word delay because there wasn't really a delay of the law. It was just an exemption of some of the requirements as per serialization. Then we had just recently this month, October 9th, a further exemption for all stakeholders in the supply chain that said that if you're eligible for this exemption, you receive a product without full serialization, you will have an exemption. But the eligibility is what the key is there. The eligibility is that you're fully connected to your trading partners, receiving all of the data for all the compliance data, and that you are making documented efforts to get serialized data from all your trading partners, and or if you're a manufacturer to send that data. So those are big eligibility items because it means you have to be on a system, you have to be compliant with at least a first phase today in order to get this exemption on some of the serialized product that or some of the non-serialized products that will come through the supply chain. And this exemption, which I think is actually a really good exemption, except for the fact it's being interpreted as a delay, but I'll address that in a second. But this exemption is staggered. So manufacturers have until May to use this exemption. Wholesalers have until August of 2025 to use this exemption, and dispensers have until November 27th to use this exemption. So they staggered it, recognizing that in order to ensure serialized data is out there, manufacturers have to be doing it 100%. So their deadline with this exemption is in May. And then in order for a dispenser to further get the right serialized data, the wholesalers have to be fully 100% serialized. So theirs is in August, and then we move into November for dispensers. But it's important to understand that it's really not a delay. The law is fully in place. And what these exemptions really say is this is what the intent of the FDA is on enforcement. They're going to give you some leeway on serialized data if you're not receiving it from your trading partners. As long as you're receiving data, you're making documented efforts to make sure you're receiving serialized data, then you have an exemption on that one part, which is really a product level exemption for those products that aren't serialized. It was there was a lot of panic out there because we knew that some wholesalers or manufacturers are not going to be able to send all serialized data on the deadline that's coming up in about 3 weeks. And we didn't know exactly how we were going to handle that. So this last exemption was received very well by the entire industry, I believe. But it's important people understand that it doesn't mean you don't have to do anything until next year. It doesn't mean you don't have to do anything until 2026. It just narrows down the scope a little bit, gives you a little bit more runway, and allows the manufacturers and the wholesalers to refine their systems and get you the serialized data. And once this is done, it's going to be a great improvement for patient safety within the supply chain that we should all be proud of.
So just to kind of move a little in a little different direction, I do want to address one area that is still an issue today, as it's been since the law was enacted, and that is pharmacies that don't understand why they need to use a service when they can do it themselves. Or the biggest misnomer is, well, my wholesalers got me covered. They have a portal, they're keeping track of all that data. That is exactly correct. That's 100% correct. So if you're buying from your primary, they all have a portal where you can go in and see what you purchased. That's all they do. Now, keep in mind, if you're purchasing from multiple wholesalers, which everybody does, and for the most part, then every one of your wholesalers need to provide you with that portal for you to have access to. So if you're audited, now you've got to go to 5 or 6 different wholesalers. Right. Some may have a portal. The bigger guys do. The smaller guys may not. So you're not going to that data's not going to be at your disposal as quickly. And the Mark, what is it? 48 hours you're given to.
Right. 48 hours you're given to produce data. If an inspector comes in and asks you for a certain set of data, maybe in a date range or an NDC level or even a wholesaler level, you're given 48 hours to produce that data. And if you have all that data in a bunch of other portals, and you need help to get that data out of the portals, which is going to be likely, then you may not, probably will not make that 48-hour deadline. In addition to that, those portals give kind of a false sense of confidence that you're compliant using those portals. All those portals are really doing is providing a repository for that data. It's not checking the licenses. You need to be checking licenses. It is a responsibility of the dispenser to make sure everybody's license is good. You need to have documented that you did it. Now, the response will be, well, why would Cardinal's license not be good, right? But you still need to be doing it. It's a requirement of the law. And then the second piece is identifying suspect product. So if what you're doing is receiving the data in the portal and it's saving there, you're comfortable doing that, you're not really viewing the data, right? So you're not aware if the data is missing components, or you may not catch a suspect product that you're required to catch, investigate, and report, because that data is not in the portal in front of you. It is not in that dashboard in front of you. So while you can do it with the portals, and you can do some of these other tasks manually, like checking licenses, it's well worth the cost of the system to have it all in one dashboard. And furthermore, if it's integrated into your pharmacy management system, which you're already using and dependent on, then it makes the whole process much easier, much more automated. I also wanted to mention about that automate. We make great efforts to make sure this process is automated, but we don't just walk away from the customer after that. We have a very robust customer service, and regulatory expert staff that's always on call, interacting with the customer to make sure that this process is easy for them. We don't just give you the tools and leave you alone. We're there to help you on every step of the process.
All right, so I'm going to kick things back to Sam, just as a shout out to listeners. For people, for pharmacy owners that are using PrimeRx, there's less risk because you already have something that you can build in, and that's terrific. Can you give some advice to our to other pharmacy owners who might not be PrimeRx customers as to maybe how to make the assessment about their own system, and maybe what's the next phase for them to have an environment that makes things this seamless?
So for non-PrimeRx users, depending on it, a lot of it is what are their PMS vendor doing? Are they supporting DSCSA? Do they provide the tools? How is that being done? One of the biggest issues that the pharmacies will have, it's been my experience with non-PrimeRx users, is handling, you've got to be prepared to handle the additional workflow that's going to be required for product intake. When you receive your product, if you're not currently scanning that into your system, then the challenge will be that you're not compliant. You don't know if what you ordered is in fact what you received. It could be just as simple as, and the thing to keep in mind is having, the serial number. It's almost impossible to do it manually. You need scanning and the law does not require you to scan, but it is the most efficient and accurate way to bring in product. To me, that's going to be the biggest piece you've got to prepare for, is the additional workload, and making sure that you have your SOWs or SOP in places for, and that's when an inspector comes in. That's one thing that the first thing they're going to ask for is, what's your standard operating procedure for suspect or illegitimate products? What do you do when you receive something that's questionable? Where's your quarantine area? How are you handling it? Do you put it off to the side? So those are things you've got to justify and need to be prepared for. We, through InfiniTrak, of course, we do have all those pieces available, and they have them. But if you're not on obviously for the non-PrimeRx, make sure you have those pieces in place. It's very important. You come in, when you get inspected, when the inspection takes place, it is being prepared to. The first thing is going to be, show me what you do. And then the next would be, okay, they could take a product off the shelf and say, give me the serialized information, the tracking information for this product. So those are the type of things to be prepared for on that. We're pushing to our customers that they need to be compliant by the end of this, by the 27th. For those pharmacies that think that they're safe, make sure you understand the law and understand what you need to be doing. That, to me, that's the biggest piece.
Yeah, and I'll say, when you're comparing other options, making sure you have that data flow and it's continuous. What we found is that sometimes the vendor's connection breaks. And if you're not paying attention to that data flow, then you may be in a position where you don't know that you're not receiving the data. And then if an inspector comes in and asks you for serialized or for compliance data for a certain item, which they may do, just pick it off the shelf, you may discover at that point you don't have that data flow coming into your system. One of the things we do is we give you an alert if you're a Cardinal customer, then all of a sudden you're not getting any Cardinal transactions. We're going to give you an alert that says you haven't received a Cardinal transaction for this time period, which will give you an alert that maybe there's a problem with the data flow, and our system will detect it also. It's also important that there's an issue with when we talk about exceptions in the industry with Drug Supply Chain Security Act. An exception can be you receive a product without data, or data without a product. So if you get a mispick from your wholesaler where they put something in your tote that does not belong there, you didn't order, probably didn't pay for. That's what we call an exception. And if you're going to put that on your shelf, you need to make sure you have that data with that product. Now, if you're depending on a portal, you're not going to know you're not going to be aware of that mispick because you're not seeing that compliance data. It's important you're able to deal with these exceptions, and you have a partner that will alert you to the exceptions and help you solve that exception with the right kind of exception reporting. With the integration with PrimeRx, we have these real-time alerts, tell you if you have an exception, and then we process it with a report to make sure you're fully compliant. But there's a lot of little things out there that you need to pay attention to and understand the law to make sure you're fully compliant. So it's important to have a partner that will help educate you in that process also.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you both. Mark, this has been terrific to talk with you and catch up with the InfiniTrak team. Thank you for being part of this podcast episode. Sam, we have to meet up more often than maybe once or twice a year. I think the next conference I'm going to that we saw you at last year was Assembia. So maybe we'll actually find some time to talk there about how PrimeRx is in the specialty pharmacy market as well.
I will see you there, Todd, for sure. I'll be there.
Excellent. Hey, if you're a pharmacy owner, you're concerned with this, if you're a pharmacy technician that runs the compliancy division of your pharmacy, do not fear. There's lots of guidance out there. Reach out to PrimeRx. Go to PrimeRx.io, or even take a look at the InfiniTrak site, which is in InfiniTrak.us. Once again, that's InfiniTrak.us. Mark, Sam, this has been special. Appreciate you sharing with us and our listeners.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you very much.